Crazy Talk. This is Crazy Talk. Once there was an ugly barnacle. He was so ugly that everyone died. The end.
Hi, 5th grade. This is Miss Harvey. It is Friday, April 10th, and we are going to do reading class together. You just heard the voice of a popular cartoon character. For today's challenge, the first person to email me the name of the character that was just talking is going to get 1 extra credit point on their reading multiple choice. Again, the first person to email me the name of the character that was just talking will get that extra credit point. Email me if you think you know the answer, and if you're the first person, you'll be the one to get the extra credit. So to be prepared for reading class today, you should have open in a separate tab Friday, April 10th reading work, and you should have a scratch sheet of paper and a writing utensil in order to write down your answers and to annotate the text as you read it. Pause the video here and go and grab those things. So today we're reading a text called Lost and Found in the Black Hole. And before we begin, we should go ahead and figure out what we need to annotate for as we're reading in order to help us better understand the text. So right now I want you to go ahead and preview the text, and I want you thinking about what would this text be considered? Is it fiction or nonfiction? And then based on your answer, what should we be annotating for as we read? Okay, so you should have just previewed your text to help yourself figure out whether it's fiction or nonfiction. After previewing the text, what did you guys think? Right, the text is fiction. So when a text is fiction, what should we be paying close attention to when we're reading, and what should we be annotating about? Exactly. You should be paying close attention to the characters and things we learn about them. But in addition to that, you should be tracking for what the problem is in this text, what the solution is in this text. And at the very end, you should be able to come up with a theme for the text. Well, what is a theme? Nice job. The theme is the overall lesson that the author wants you as the reader to learn from the text. So based on the problem and the solution of this fiction text, you should be able to figure out the theme. So now you're going to go ahead and read the text independently, and as you're reading, you should be annotating on a sheet of paper for the problem, the solution, and at the end, you should be able to come back and discuss your theme. Again, to be able to read the text, you should have a separate tab open with the ELA packet for Friday, April 10th. If you don't have that open, you won't be able to read the text. You're going to pause the video here and read the text now. Okay, so you should be restarting this video if you've already read the text and annotated for yourself. If you haven't, then you should go back and do that now. Wow, that was such an interesting story. What did you guys think? Cool. So, we're going to go ahead and go over some of the main points of the story before you take your multiple choice quiz. First, let's talk about characters. Who was the main character in this text? Yep, you're correct. Our main character in the text was Darren. There were a couple other characters, his two friends, and his mom and dad, but the text was mainly about Darren. So, when thinking about our main character, we need to now go back and discuss what the problem and the solution were in this text. So, what was the main problem for Darren? Exactly. Well, there are a couple problems in the text. The first problem in the text was that Darren kept losing his things. This was a smaller problem because Darren came up with a solution for this problem pretty early on in the text. So Darren realized that he kept losing his things, and then how did he solve that problem? Exactly. In paragraph 17, he asked his best friends to follow him around in order to help him stop losing his items. So that was a smaller problem in our text. It definitely was a problem for Darren, but it was not our main problem. What do you think the main problem was in this text? So the main problem in this text was that Darren was misplacing things and then misplacing eventually himself too because he wasn't caring for his items. So later on in the text, we'll see that Darren experienced kind of a scary situation. He didn't know where he was on his walk home. In this moment, Darren realized that his problem was that he wasn't caring about his items or paying much attention to his items or himself, and therefore he was misplacing little things like socks, but also big things like himself. So, the overall main problem in this text is that Darren isn't placing much care or attention to his items or himself, and he's losing lots of things. Now, I want you to think about the solution to this problem. Well, we talked about how earlier in the text, Darren asked his best friends to follow him around so that he wouldn't lose his smaller items. So that was part of his solution. But later on in the text, when he thinks he's lost himself, what is his solution to that problem? Exactly. In paragraph 35, the author mentions Darren's solution. He sort of stops, he thinks about where he is, and he tries not to be too careless. He thinks about exactly the area and using his memory for where he had been before he got lost so that he could understand exactly where he was and solve his problem. So overall, yeah, he uses his best friends to help him, but Darren also realizes that he has to think more and he has to be less careless about his items and himself so that he doesn't find himself in this situation again. So now, based on our solution and our problem, I want you to come up with a theme that the author was trying to teach the audience. So, what is a lesson that we can learn based on the problem and the solution of this text? What do you think? Yep, I think that's a pretty good theme. Nice job. So, now we're going to use all of the annotations that we just did in order to help us answer the multiple choice questions. Your multiple choice questions are located in Google Classroom, but you won't be able to answer them without the secret code. So, the secret code for today's reading multiple choice questions is BURGER. 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 Again, the secret code for today's multiple choice reading questions is BURGER. BURGER. You should go ahead and take the multiple choice question quiz. And then when you are done, you come back to this video and check your work using this video. Pause here and do that now. Okay, so you should have already taken your multiple choice quiz on Google Classroom and you're back here with me to review your answers. So let's start with number 2. What did you select for number 2? How do Darren and Mr. Grabber differ in the story? Well, to answer this question, let's go back to the part of the text where Mr. Grabber is mentioned. After Darren realizes he's lost his materials, he goes to the lost and found first to try and find them. Let's go ahead and reread that section so we can compare the two characters. Right now, I want you to reread paragraphs 7 through 17. So after rereading paragraphs 7 through 17, what did you notice about Darren and Mr. Grabber? Well, why does Darren come to the lost and found anyway? Yeah, he comes to find his items. He is hopeful to find his items. He says there's always a first time to find something, and he says they might be in the first box because he lost them today. But what is Mr. Grabber's response to Darren trying to find his items in the lost and found? He pretty much says that nobody ever finds items in the lost and found, and that items like what Darren is trying to find aren't really important. So he's really not going to have much luck finding them because nobody cares about those items. Well, let's go back to the answer choices. Which answer choice best matches what we just talked about? Right, the correct answer is C. Darren hopes to find his items in the lost and found, but Mr. Grabber is doubtful. Mr. Grabber does not think that Darren will be able to find his items in the lost and found. Which two details from the story support how Darren and Mr. Grabber are different? Choose one detail that supports Darren and one that supports Mr. Grabber. Well, right now I want you to go back to the paragraphs that we just read, 7 through 17, and I want you to select two pieces of evidence that support our answer to part A. One detail that's about Darren and one that's about Mr. Grabber. What detail did you choose for Darren? Exactly. B, where Darren says there's always a first time, he's being really hopeful that he can find the item and saying that even though maybe he hasn't found them before, maybe this will be his first time finding an item. So we got a piece of evidence for Darren. Now let's think about Mr. Grabber. I agree. C, once an item goes into the last box, it's destroyed. Mr. Grabber was basically trying to persuade Darren not to even waste his time looking in the lost and found because nobody finds anything anyways. And then he said that once an item goes in the last box, it's destroyed. So your item probably isn't even here. He was not hopeful. He was very doubtful that Darren would be able to find his item in the lost and found. Number 3. How does getting lost affect Darren differently than losing his belongings? To answer this question, we need to go back into the text to the section where Darren got lost. Well, right now I want you to go ahead and reread paragraphs 28 through paragraph 37. Pause the video here and do that now. Okay, so now that you reread those paragraphs, we're better able to answer the question. How does Darren getting lost affect him differently than him losing his belongings? Well, how did Darren react to losing his belongings? That's correct. When he lost his belongings, he tries to get his best friends Elvin and Carlton to help him by following him and making sure he doesn't lose anything. How does he react when he lost himself? Very true. Instead, when he loses himself, he tries to figure out his problem by stopping and thinking about where he is in order to help him be able to figure out where he is and how to get home. Which answer choices matches what we just said? Correct, it would be C. When Darren gets lost, he finds his own way rather than depending on other people. Now for part B, we need to select a quote that best supports our answer to part A. What did you think? The answer here is B, because when he got lost, he decided to try and solve the problem himself. Suddenly, he knew what he had to do: stay put and remember where he'd been. Darren was problem solving by staying calm and trying to solve this problem of where he was by remembering exactly where he had been before. Let's move on. Number 4. What is a theme in this passage? Setting a good example is important. Thinking back to the problem and solution that we talked about earlier in this video, that theme is not connected to our problem and our solution. C. Spending time with good friends is rewarding. Again, this theme is not connected to our problem and solution, and therefore we know it cannot be accurate for this text. Achieving a goal requires practice. Once again, it's not connected to our problem and solution that we discussed earlier. It's not the correct answer. Here, the answer is B. Problem solving requires calm thinking. In order to solve his problem of getting lost, Darren remained calm and he thought about where he had last been to help himself remember where he was. Which paragraph from the passage illustrates the theme selected in part A? So, we can't just pick an answer choice based on these numbers. We've got to go back and read these separate paragraphs. So right now, I want you to go back and read paragraphs 29, 31, and 32, and 36 to figure out what the best answer would be. When I went back to read, I noticed that the solution for Darren's problem, staying calm and trying to solve the issue himself, was located in paragraph 36, and it's directly connected to the theme of this text. Suddenly, he knew what he had to do: stay put and remember where he'd been. Scrutinizing the area, he summoned his memory. Was he really lost or simply misplaced? As he stood looking about, he realized he was in front of Elvin's house, only several blocks away from home. He'd simply missed his turn. The correct answer here is D, paragraph 36. Paragraph 36 is directly connected to the solution of this text, which helped us to figure out the theme: problem solving requires calm thinking. Okay, guys, well, that's it for today. It's Friday, so have a good weekend, and we'll be back at this again Monday morning.